Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah, Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah. And a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word, in all truth and in sincerity. This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6 and verse 24. And it reads, "But the multitude of the wise is the welfare of the world, and a wise king is the upholding of the people." All right, and I was just meditating through the spirit on the kingdom of heaven, and, contrary to what we were taught in Christianity, the kingdom of heaven consists of a government, a rulership on earth that will never be taken down. All right, and inside of that rulership, righteousness will flourish. And the way the world is meant to be inhabited will be experienced in the kingdom of heaven. All right, let's go here to prophecy in Daniel, the second chapter. All right, Daniel chapter 2 and verse 44. "And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." All right. And that is what the kingdom of heaven is. All right. It's a rulership on earth. And that rulership is Yahweh Shai, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus, at the head of it, with the nation of Israel as joint heirs, beginning with the elect. And through that rulership, the world will be inhabited and experienced in righteousness. All right. The Lord didn't make the planet for it to be ruled in wickedness and then destroyed. That wasn't the intent. All right. Really, the Lord took the scenic route concerning giving the elect a understanding of why wickedness is not better than righteousness, and why righteousness should rule a nation and in the world, because we're living the consequences of wicked rulership. All right. Proverbs 29:2. We all know this precept. I'm going to bring it out for edification's sake. Proverbs 29:2. "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn." You weren't created to work in a cubicle or work in a warehouse for 30 or 40 years and then spend the fourth quarter of your life enjoying the fruits of your labor, so to speak. That's not how the Lord set up life. All right. Chasing fiat currency and possessions, and having your identity linked to how many possessions you have on this side. That's not how life was intended to be lived. All right. And that's why the earth is in mourning. The people are in mourning. Creation is in mourning. That's something about looking at the Lord's creation. Even if you're watching it on a video, you're watching an animal have its being, and there's something that resonates inside of your spirit. Life was made to be enjoyed, truly. It's just being in this society, things have been corrupted. All right, let's go here. This is Isaiah 45 and 18, but I'm going to read it in the NLT. Isaiah 45 and 18 reads, "For the Lord is God, and he created the heavens and earth and put everything in place. He made the world to be lived in, not to be a place of empty chaos. I am the Lord," he says, "and there is no other." The reason I bring this out is because the world we live in today and the way society is formed is not the ultimate intent of how life should be lived on earth. All right. This is a very wicked and chaotic way of living on earth, and it's really a miserable way of living, which is why in the richest country on the planet, people have to have antidepressants to get through their existence, which shows you that possessions alone and money alone is not the determining factor of happiness. This is why we look for a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness, because in the kingdom of heaven, the law, statutes, and commandments are going to go forth. And through the law, statutes, and commandments going forth, life will actually be able to be enjoyed. You shouldn't have a graveyard shift, and these are small examples, but they're important when you think about society at large. There should be a day of rest where everything stops and people have the opportunity to rest and recuperate. Certain things are not considered food. You know, putting a animal like a pig or shrimp, crab, or lobster on your plate is to put a scavenger, a biological garbage can on your plate. It's not meant to be consumed as food. You know, these are things that are, and it's not small. You know, these are big things because they make big differences. And that's why the kingdom of heaven is so important, not just for the nation of Israel, all right, who will have joint rulership under Yahweh Shai, but it's for the rest of the planet. Creation itself groaneth for a righteous rulership. The land is being overfarmed. You're supposed to give the land a Sabbath every 7 years, man. And these are very clear examples that you can clearly see why the earth is in the way that it's destroyed, it's defiled. All right. And you can clearly see why, because there is no law and order concerning the laws of the Heavenly Father being enforced in the earth. And as a result, everybody's miserable. You know, people suffer from what they call destination happiness syndrome. And that's a syndrome. Or I believe that's how it's termed, destination happiness. But it's basically a term where you believe in your mind that you'll be happier at another place. So if you just get the new car, you'll be happy. Or if you move into the new house, you'll be happy. And people chase this carrot on a stick all the way into the grave. And that's not how life was intended to be lived. All right. And it's not going to be lived like this forever. That's why the kingdom of heaven is not just going to benefit the Israelites. It's going to benefit everyone, including creation, except for Esau, Edom. All right, this is Isaiah 2:2. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. All right, and that mountain goes into government. All right, we just read in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, about a kingdom that will be set up that will never be taken down. That is that mountain of the Lord's house, that government, that governing body. All right, and all nations shall flow unto it. Just like America has the top influence on the earth concerning other nations, the nation of Israel under Yahweh Shai, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus, will have complete influence over the planet. All right, the same way the world gravitates towards Jake when it comes to trends and music and culture. Imagine that geared in righteousness. The world is going to flow unto the nation of Israel under Yahweh Shai, and righteousness is going to pour forth through it. You know, when you look at the world, everything, all the major issues in the world, and you look at the law, statutes, and commandments, it's clear to see that a deviation from the law, statutes, and commandments equals the world we see today. If the law concerning adultery was actually enforced, all right, a lot of these relationships wouldn't look the way they look. A lot of these conversations that happen on podcasts would not happen. Even when you deal with a dietary law, people would live longer. All right, when you deal with just weights and balances, it wouldn't be fiat currency. You wouldn't have a foreign exchange where the currency can be valued and devalued, because in the kingdom of heaven, true money is going to be put in place, not fiat currency. All right. And these are just some of many examples of a prelude into the kingdom, because we understand that the laws are going to flow from Zion, meaning the law, statutes, and commandments are going to be enforced on the planet. All right, let's go. Let's continue to verse 3, Isaiah 2:3. And many people shall go and say, come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And that's what the world needs. The law, statutes, and commandments need to be enforced on the planet. And without it, you have a world where people live in misery. You shouldn't need narcotics to get through life, rich or poor, because the rich are taking just as many drugs, if not more, than the poor. And why is that? Because this world is not being ran in righteousness, man. From the food to the water to the monetary system to the relationships, Everything has been tainted on this side, and it's because there's a deviation from the law, statutes, and commandments. All right, this is Isaiah chapter 24 and verse 5. It says, the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. Now, when you get this Hebrew word for desolate, all right, the word is asham, and it says to offend, be guilty, trespass, to do wrong, offend, trespass, commit offense, do injury, to be desolate, acknowledge offense, or to be guilty, to be punished or perish. And everyone is in a state of perishing under this rulership. Corroded pipes, food that isn't really food. Over farming the land so you don't get nutrients. So you have a whole industry that is built upon giving you vitamins that you should get from your food. And people just pass on as if none of this is, as if this is normal. Nothing about this is normal. This is not how life is supposed to be lived. And the so-called white man will get on these cameras and pretend like, this is the best that life can offer. And it's not. It's because they rule through greed. So in turn, everybody has this greedy mentality. The scriptures talk about when Yahushua gets in rulership, equity will be implemented in the earth, man. All right, this is Psalms 98 and 9. Before the Lord, Salakia, let me start at verse 8. All right, it says, let the floods clap their hands. Let the hills be joyful together before the Lord. For he cometh to judge the earth. With righteousness shall he judge the world and the people with equity. Really, there's enough food to feed everyone on the planet. All right. There's no reason why you should have nations of people that are just completely starving, or they don't have access to clean water. That's a lack of equity on the planet. It doesn't mean that they have to get the same share of everything that you have, but there's certain common decencies that everyone should be allowed to have on the planet. But because the devil is in rulership, all right, everything is ruled by greed. All right, he that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? At this point, your so-called white man is even evil unto himself. All right, because they have the rulership on the planet. All right, beginning with the elites of the so-called white man. They have the rulership. They have the dominion. And they use financial policy. They use militaries of nations to gather more power unto themselves. They have the ability to change the circumstance of the earth, but they will not. And it shows proof that they're not fit to rule. With all the technology in the planet, why do you still have areas of the planet that don't have access to clean water? And it's because the earth is truly being ruled by the wicked. And they've convinced everybody that this is just how life is supposed to be. And it's not, man. All right. Let me go. I'm going to read this one more time. It says Psalms 98 and 9. Before the Lord, for he cometh to judge the earth. With righteousness shall he judge the world and the people with equity. Yeah, let's deal with the topic of adultery. If a woman who is married sleeps with another man. All right. And that man and that woman are supposed to be put to death. You shouldn't have a court system where because you have enough money, you can find some loophole to get out of something that you know you're guilty of. That's not equity, man. And there's so much corruption going forth in the earth because the wicked are in rulership. And everybody is following the beat of Esau's drum. And in turn, everybody is miserable because of it. All right, because he's truly not meant to rule. This was really a punishment on the sons of God, that the Lord put the bases of men in a position that belongs to the sons of God as far as rulership. Because Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, we're the Israelites. And as a nation of people, we're probably the most compassionate people on the planet. If you really sit back and think about Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, us as a nation of people, we're a very compassionate nation of people. Even on the bottom, even with lacking resources, Jake still has a level of compassion. Now imagine that in righteousness. You know who's the furthest thing from compassion? Esau Edom, the so-called white man. He's the furthest thing from a compassionate nation of people. They lack empathy. I forget where it was said. There was a study that was done that found that the so-called white man as a nation of people. They did some tests and they found out that they lack, compared to other nations, they lack empathy. All right. And don't quote me on it because I kind of heard it in passing. But as a nation of people, you can look at our nation, Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and we're a compassionate people, man. And that's what the Lord wants in rulership. A compassionate nation in righteousness. All right. Because the scriptures say we're going to rule with a rod of iron. But there's going to be balance. We're going to understand how to apply mercy, when to apply mercy, and when to apply judgment. And we're learning from our Father, who is doing this every day, flawlessly. And that's what the kingdom of heaven entails. It's going to be a righteous rulership on earth where the planet will actually be enjoyed by the inhabitants. Right now, the basis of men is in rulership. All right. And to land back that point, this is Daniel 4:17. This matters by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basis of men. So the Lord showed forth his power by taking Esau, who was considered the basis of men, and giving him dominion on earth. All right. And as a result, all right, the people are in mourning. All right. Real quick, this is Proverbs 30 and 21. For 3 things the earth is disquieted, and for 4 which it cannot bear. For a servant when he reigneth, and a fool when he is filled with meat. So a servant being in rulership causes the earth to be disquieted. And you look around the planet, it's a result of a servant having dominion and rulership on the earth. All right. Matter of fact, to land back this point, this is Proverbs 19. And I'm going to jump down to verse 10. Delight is not seemly for a fool, much less for a servant to have rule over princes. So you have the basis of men having rulership and dominion over the princes of God, the sons of God, which are the Israelites, Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And again, the elder in Hawaii had said this some time back, and it's always stuck with me, that this world is an open classroom for the elect, and the elect are learning what not to do concerning rulership by living in a wicked dominion. All right. That's why the kingdom of heaven is going to entail a rulership, a divine rulership that will never be destroyed. And it's going to be ran in righteousness. Even the other nations are going to be able to enjoy their children. They're going to be able to enjoy their families. They're not going to be stuck in some cubicle with artificial lighting. All right. They're going to be able to enjoy their children in their land. They're not going to be in a world where another nation can just come and take from them. Scriptures say the world is not going to learn war anymore in the kingdom of heaven. There's going to be no need for war. All disagreements are going to be able to are going to be taken to Yahweh Shai. All right. And they're going to be hashed out in righteousness. Ammon is not going to be able to take Moab's land. All right. Ishmael is not going to be able to rob Ham. All nations are going to have to play nice, so to speak. After 1,000 years of captivity, they're going to go back into their own lands, but they're going to live better, far better than they're living here. And one thing I always think about, the truth itself, having access to truth itself is going to speak volumes concerning the kingdom of heaven. We've grown up in a society where most people don't know what's true and what's not. And the only reason the elect know is according to the gift of faith. In the kingdom of heaven, whether you are of another nation or of the nation of Israel, everyone's going to understand what the truth is. Everyone's going to understand the process of death. All right. What's considered food, what is not considered food. All right. The Sabbath day, the scriptures say this is our wisdom in the sight of the nations. It's going to be enforced on the planet. And through that, the world is going to be far better for it. All right. This is Isaiah 11:9. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters covers, as the waters cover the sea. So everywhere they're going to know, they're going to have a knowledge of the Heavenly Father. The basics, the milk, if you will. They're going to be born into a world where they understand they're going to come back in their third and fourth generation. They're going to understand that pork is not considered food, that's not an animal meant to consume. The human body is not meant to consume that. They're going to understand these things. These are going to be things that they understand from a child growing up to an adult. And even though it seems small, just having access to truth in abundance is going to be a great leap concerning the kingdom of heaven. Because we were taught in this world that, your life is defined by how much you have. Not the quality of life, but how much do you have? How many people covet your lifestyle? And that determines, are you considered a success? And that's the furthest thing from how life is supposed to be lived and enjoyed. All right, this is Luke 12:15 from our Lord. And it reads, and he said unto them, take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And we live in a world where it's completely opposite. And this is why the kingdom of heaven is needed, not just for us as a nation of people concerning us being Israelites, but for the planet, for creation itself. You shouldn't have animals that are just trapped in some artificial environment that mimics them being in the wild and being in nature. There was a video that came out a while ago of a chimpanzee that hadn't seen the sky in 30 years, man. Because Esau had him in some laboratory, poking him up and testing him. The level of wickedness that man, and you think about the slaughterhouses and how they put these animals to death in such a cruel and frightening way that cortisol seeps through the meat. And in turn, you end up consuming that meat. Or Esau pumping hormones into the animals to make them grow faster so he can make a quick dollar. That's wicked, man. That's wicked. And at a certain point through the spirit, it stops being about, because you find out this truth and you Tawadi Halba Shemal Shah, you find out, the Lord said a small one shall be a great nation. But then you mature in this truth and you realize how important the kingdom of heaven is for the sake of creation, man. In general, like generally speaking, the world should be ran in righteousness with a level of compassion for the creatures that the Lord has made, man. This is a cruel way of living. And people are so used to it that they can't even fathom something different. And that's why I love 2nd Esdras, the 6th chapter. All right, I'm going to get it real quick. It's 2nd Esdras 6:9. It says, for Esau is the end of the world. Now, when you deal with that word world in this verse, it's dealing with the age, not the planet itself, but an age. For Esau is the end of the world, or you can say end of the age, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get this same verse in the GNT. All right, bear with me. So this is 2nd Esdras 6 and 9 in the Good News translation. All right, and it reads, Esau represents the end of this age, and Jacob represents the beginning of the new age. All right, now I'm going to jump down in 2nd Esdras, the 6th chapter, and I'm going to jump to verse 27 in the KJV. All right, it says, for evil shall be put out, and deceit shall be quenched. As for faith, it shall flourish. Corruption shall be overcome, and the truth which hath been so long without fruit shall be declared. Which shows you that we live in the age of corruption. All right, we live in the age of deceit. Because with the passing of this world, the Lord is saying that corruption and deceit are going to be a thing of the past. And this is why we hasten the day, because we desire the kingdom of heaven where true rest is allowed. There's no real rest on this side of life. Not for us as Israelites, and at this point, not for other nations either. You don't get to really rest in a society like this. It's so bad that you feel guilty if you get rest, which is anti-life, man. The Lord didn't make life for it to be ran, corrupted, and wickedly, and then it's just over. Never really getting to enjoy nature, getting to witness the Lord's creation. Literally, we watching the Lord's creation through computers. The Lord didn't intend for the world to be to be inhabited like this. But this is a lesson. This is a lesson for the elect first and foremost. And then the other nations in the kingdom of heaven, they're going to remember a time. All right. They're going to talk about the time where the world was inhabited and society looked like this, and how much better it is in the kingdom of heaven. Because the other nations are not going to have the laws written into their hearts. They're still going to have to strive to offend less. They're still going to be subject to the flesh. So that means judgments are going to have to go forth. But whether you're a rich man or a poor man, if adultery happens, you're going to get the same judgment. It's not going to be capped. It's not going to be biased based on how much money you got and what kind of lawyer you can get to get you out of a loophole and bond you out. Nah, true justice and judgment is going to pour forth. And through that, the world is going to be enjoyed. Something as small as mixed fabrics. Esau don't tell you, but there's healing properties to having certain fabrics on your body. And on the opposite spectrum, on the opposite end of that, certain mixed fabrics are actually detrimental to your health. And you can do your own research on it, going into the electromagnetic field of your body and how certain fabrics interfere with it. And it seems small, but these things, when you zoom out to a society and a world and a planet, these small things have great impacts. And that's why the Lord is going to bring in the kingdom of heaven. All right. This is Revelation 5:9. And they sung a new song saying, "Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof. For thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and hast made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth." And that's when the world is going to be inhabited and enjoyed. All right. Not just by the Israelites, but the other nations outside of Esau are going to be able to enjoy life. All right. Because every nation was made for, they got a reason. They have a purpose. It's just everything is perverted on this side because Esau rules the planet through greed, not equity. All right. This is Ecclesiastes 10:4. The power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord, and in due time he will set over it one that is profitable. And that one that is profitable is Yahweh Shai, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus. All right. And this is the beauty of it. As we see things begin to come to a head in this society, we also have a comfort in knowing that this is the end of Esau's world and the beginning of Jacob. And through the rulership of Jacob, the earth, the planet will be inhabited and enjoyed in its proper in its proper order. Because everything has a purpose when it's in its proper order. But Esau promotes disorder and darkness because this is the type of environment he thrives in. All right. And that's why the Wadi Halbashim Shad, the Lord said what? He would make the days short. Otherwise, there would be no flesh left to save, because at this pace, Esau, nobody would be left. Esau done got to a point where he's preying on his own people, which shows you that we're at the end of his reign. Scriptures say a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. All right. But Lord willing, this was edifying. I just wanted to go into that because, after these long days of work, you really sit back and you think about You meditate on a lot, right? And then you get to that point where you're comforted by the understanding of what the Lord told us, that rest will be allowed. You know, that the world that we live in today, it won't be the same. We're at the end of a certain age and the beginning of a new age. And in that new age, as it says in 2nd Esdras, the 8th chapter, rest is allowed. Perfect goodness, wisdom. Not just in some corner of a city, but flooding the earth as the waters cover the sea. All right, so with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.